Regardless of what type of project you're working on, at some point during that project, I can guarantee that you're going to need to align objects either to one another or to the artboard. Illustrator can do this in a variety of different ways and with ease, using one unassuming panel, the Align panel. Let's take a closer look. I'm beginning this video with the align.ai file already open on my computer. And as you can see, I really just have a bunch of random elements on here. Well, maybe not really random, but elements that are not organized in any fashion. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start to organize this because this is going to be kind of a navigational section for a website. So you can see we have these 5 different categories, and of course, I just dropped them on here. Now we need to align them appropriately. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Align panel. And I'm going to do that by going to Window and choosing Align. And that's going to open the Align panel. Now, you want to make sure you're showing all of the options. So you can click on the double arrow here a couple of times until you see all 3 sections. And then what I want to do to start is I want to click on this rectangle in the background, and I want to center it on the artboard. Now, by default, the Align panel is not going to center this on the artboard. You're going to notice that if I click on this button, nothing happens, and this button, nothing happens. Well, the reason for that is because by default, Illustrator wants to align objects to one another. So down here in this little button right here, you can also access this up here in your control panel. And I'm going to click on that, and you can see that by default, it's aligning it to the selection. So I'm going to change this to Align to Artboard. And now when I click on the Align Horizontal Center and Align Vertical Center buttons, it's going to align that object right where it needs to be. Now, what I also want to do is this guy right here, we want this to be aligned to the top in the center. So what we can do is we can click on this, but you'll notice that they're independent of one another. And what's going to happen if I highlight this, what I want to do is I want to center it on the artboard. So I already have this set to center. So I'm going to click Align Center. That looks good. And then I want to align it to the top of the artboard vertically. So I'm going to click that. But you're going to notice that what happened was both the text and the object behind it are aligned to the very top. And that's not exactly what I wanted. Now, why did it do that? Well, because technically these are 2 totally separate elements. So let me undo that twice. And you can see that the text is separate from the background item. And so they were each treated independently of one another. What I need to do is select this and go to Object and choose Group. Now that I've grouped it, it's going to treat the group as the object instead of each individual component as its own object. So if I click on this now and choose Align Horizontal Center and Align to the vertical top, now it did exactly what I wanted it to. Now, what I want to do here is, so that I don't accidentally select this content later on, I'm going to put this content on its own layer. So let's go ahead and go to the Layers panel. We're going to create a new layer, and we'll double-click on that and call it Background. And I'm going to move that below Layer 1. And then I'm going to marquee these 2 items and drag the blue square down to the background layer, and then I'm going to lock it. Now I won't accidentally click on it, and I can keep working with my other components. So let's make layer 1 active. Go ahead and collapse that layers panel. And now I want to align these components. Now, with these components, I want to align them centered to their text. And you'll notice that some of these, if I click on Apparel here, you can see that's separate from this. And you can see this one, this text is not grouped at all. So we have to be a little bit careful. So knowing what we know now from when we were aligning this sporting equipment text, we're going to want to make sure that these components are grouped together. So I'm going to marquee this, and I'm going to make sure that I group it. And so I'm going to do that to each one of these. Make sure that the circle and the icon along with it is grouped together. You can use a keyboard shortcut Command G if you want to. I'll go ahead and do that now. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the text just to make sure that all the characters of this text are grouped, and this is no longer actual text that's been outlined. So now what I can do is I'm going to marquee the icon with the text, and now instead of aligning it to the artboard, I want to align it to the selection. So make sure we have that chosen, and then I'm going to click on the horizontal align center icon, and that's going to align the two components together. So I'll go ahead and marquee these. Now you'll notice when I select both of these items for each of these different elements that when I align them to the center, they kind of split the difference between the two objects. There's going to come a time where you want to align objects, but you want one of the objects to stay where it is. And Illustrator makes it easy to do that. You can see that when I have these two items selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click one more time on the icon. And you can see I get a heavy blue border, or it's going to depend on the color of the layer actually. But you get a heavy border, and that is defining the key object. And you'll notice now when I choose the horizontal align center icon that the circle stays where it is and the text aligns to it. So same thing down here, I could do the opposite. If I click again on the text, now when I choose horizontal align center, the icon aligns to the text. So that's how you can get greater control. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight another one of these groups because I want to make sure that the text is the correct distance from each icon. And you can see that each one of these is a different value. So what I'm going to do is with these two items selected, we can do a distribute spacing. But you'll notice that you can distribute the spacing vertically or horizontally. And I want to do it vertically. But you'll notice when I click this button, nothing happens. Well, if you come over here, I want to add a spacing to it, but it's grayed out. And that's because I need to define a key object. So the minute I click again on this circle, I get the heavy border around it, but now the distribute spacing field is available. And I'm going to go ahead and put a 1/4 inch in there. And now when I click on the vertical distribute space icon, it's going to distribute the space between the icon and the text. I'm going to go ahead and do that to these other items as well. And that way, every one of these is going to be aligned, or I should say the text is going to be the same distance away from the icon. There we go. Do it one more time. Perfect. Now what I want to do is I want to align these across vertically. But remember, if I do it right now, they're all going to get aligned differently because these are two separate items. So I'm going to group the icon with the text now. And I'm just using the keyboard shortcut Command-G on Mac or Control-G on Windows. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select every one of these icons. And they need to align vertically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on one of these to define it as the key object. And now when I come over here and click on the vertical align center, they're all going to align to that icon. And that's going to make it a little bit easier for me to adjust. I can drag and choose where I want this to align. That looks pretty good. Now what I'd like to do is distribute these icons horizontally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these, and in the Distribute Objects section, you can see I can distribute these in a number of different ways, vertically and horizontally. So I'm going to choose the Horizontal Distribute Center icon. And as you can see, it's going to distribute them equally. It's exactly what I want. However, I want this icon to be over here. So the way that distribute works is it takes the farmost icon on the one side and the farmost icon on the other side and distributes them accordingly. So in order to get these spaced out evenly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the apparel icon, and so that I don't inadvertently move these up and down, I'm going to hold down the Shift key as I drag, and that's going to keep it aligned in the vertical direction. So I'm going to position this so that it's about the equal distance from the right side of the artboard. Then I'll select all of these, and we're going to click on the horizontal distribute center icon. And now they're all going to be distributed equally. Now, one last thing I'm going to do, I want to make sure that these are all centered perfectly. And I think we're pretty close, but I think if you look here, we're not quite dead center. So it's easy enough for me to do. I'm going to group all of these together, and then I'm going to change the Align To Align to Artboard. And now if I click the horizontal align center icon, I should see a very minor slight shift. But now we have these evenly spaced, aligned properly in the horizontal and vertical directions, and we're ready to roll with our project. As you can see, Illustrator takes the guesswork out of aligning objects. By using the Align panel, you're guaranteed to get objects positioned exactly the way that you want them.